When I discussed the fact that organizations have a life cycle, that nothing lasts forever, my guess is that all of you are probably thinking, I think that's got to be right. I mean, we know that there is no country that's lasted forever. We know that organizations that were at the peak of their success 50 years ago are no longer at the peak of their success. We've had new organizations that have been successful. So I think most of you are thinking, well, okay. But then why? Why is that? I mean, hello, like if we take the United States, we've got an incredible group of intelligent individuals, researchers, scientists who have developed all this incredible technology. How come we're not going to just continue to blossom into the most successful country in the world for many, many, many centuries ahead? Well, there is a reason. So I thought I would pass it to you so that you can pontificate on why. I'm going to give you a name that's a kind of a strange name that you've probably never heard about, but it's one that actually captures the reason why countries, organizations are not infinitely successful. It's called requisite variety. Requisite variety. Now, what that term means is there has to be significant differences and variations in your environment for any organism, any living entity, any organization, any country to survive, to last, to continue. Now, when I say differences, what am I really talking about? Well, if we'll go back to the emergence of the United States way back when the country was first growing, we had the influx of many different individuals, different cultures, different religions, people that came from different countries, people that certainly didn't speak English. All of these differences were all of a sudden entering into the country. Now, you might think, yeah, but a lot of these people were pretty ignorant. I mean, hello, what were they really contributing? That's, of course, not true. But even for people that weren't well educated, some of those became the millionaires of the 19th century. So the reason why the United States has been the most powerful country in the entire world for over a century is because we were able to embody a rich diversity of individuals, mixes of people that came from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different mental abilities and skills. And so when you put all of that together, the richness of that mix, what you wind up doing is creating a whole system countrywide where you're able to create new ideas, new products, new visions, new businesses. And as a result, you can actually have great success. Now, if you're only attracting a singular type of entity or individual or energy, then there's a great restriction in that person's ability to be able to think, reason, create, invent. So invention requires diversity. It requires people who are always thinking outside the box. So when you've got people who all of a sudden who have constrained their thinking that there's only one way that the world has to exist, you're not in the long run going to be able to survive. Now, I say long run, I'm not saying that's going to happen quickly, but eventually it is inevitable. If you don't have sufficient requisite variety, then you're going to be in deep, as they say, doo-doo. Now, if we think of, for example, some of what's happening in the United States recently, there is this great division. People who were saying, well, your side is wrong, your beliefs are wrong, the only way to go is this way. In order to be able to, again, have a continuation of the success, you really have to be able to say, okay, boy, I don't believe the same thing you do, but hey, let's just put that into the mix. In other words, we really have to have the honoring of differences. of people who are overweight, people who are too thin, people who are smart, people who are probably not that smart, people who are different colors, people different religions, people with different backgrounds, different attitudes, different beliefs. When the country was founded by the people who, in essence, were the founders of the United States, we basically had the situation where they got into a room and there were significant differences. People did not agree, but they sat and they say, okay, well, let's talk this out. Oh, I don't like what you're thinking. Oh, I don't really agree with that. But after many, many months, you were able to have some kind of an agreement of what needed to happen for this country. Now, that design, that template, that constitution has lasted now for, well, almost here 300 years, and we hope that it will continue to last into the future. So the bottom line is this. Why is it that organizations don't survive? Why is it that countries don't survive? The answer is that over time, that differences, the requisite variety that is so essential for survival, all of a sudden no longer exist. So when you have these shifts in the environment, you have to have adaptability. And when there's too much restriction in people's ability to do that, you can't adapt and you can't change. So requisite variety is my answer for you today of why it is that organizations in the long run do not survive. I don't mean over the last 5 or 6 or 10 years. Sometimes it's going to be many, many years into the future, but ultimately there is a demise because, again, the organization over time becomes more rigid in what they do, less adaptable, less able to then survive as the environment shifts and changes. Requisite variety, that's my answer. Thank you so much for being a participant in here, my new adventure in life, which is my 25-cent wisdom.